Welcome to the Women of Distance podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Kramer. These are the stories of motivated women chasing big dreams in the distance running world. You'll hear from women who are crushing it on the trails, the track, and the road. These are not just the stories of women's results at the top of the sport, but the full story of how she got there, the challenges, failures, successes, lessons, and life between the miles. Women of Distance is proudly supported by Open Fuel, responsible sports nutrition to fuel your adventure. Check out their products and their mission at openfuel.co and use code WOD for 20% off your first and every order. You can also visit the Women of Distance Substack to read more behind-the-scenes happenings, including how I'm using Open Fuel in my own training. I want to thank Soar Running for their support of the Women of Distance podcast. Soar Running design and produce running apparel that does justice to the commitment and passion of runners globally. Their collections are designed specifically for running, high-performance racing, and also off-road adventure and endurance. Check them out at soarrunning.com. That's SOAR running.com. Women of Distance is also supported by our good friends and fellow trail runners at Summit Roasters. Roasted fresh in my hometown, you can support the podcast by visiting summit-roasters.com and using code WOD15 for 15% off every order. You can find all of these links and codes in the show notes and know that we really appreciate you supporting those supporting us. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy. Thanks for listening. Okay, I am hanging out with Bailey Kowalczyk. Bailey, thanks so much for being on Women of Distance. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I am doing well. I'm happy to be here. Happy to finally chat with you.
I am really excited to chat too. As I said before we hit record, I've been wanting to have this conversation for a while. Your name comes up on this podcast relatively often, and the context typically is talking about maybe an FKT route or a course record at a race, and it's along the lines of, well, it's a Bailey Kowalczyk record, so I knew it was good. I knew it was legit, and I'm really excited to get to catch up with you right after Gorge Waterfalls 50K was a bit of a comeback race for you. And we're going to get into the whole story that goes along with that and the comeback race, what you were coming back from. But before we get there, I do want to introduce you to our listeners and kind of go way back in time to where athletics first entered your life before you were a trail runner.
Yeah, well, thank you. First of all, it's, that's an honor. I think you've had some amazing names on your podcast. And so it's always an honor to know that people are mentioning me, because I feel the same about them, I'm sure. But yeah, I lived a very active childhood. I feel like running was always a piece of it. I played soccer for a while growing up, but I was kind of the kid that loved running back and forth on the field. Any chance that we got to do sprints or there was a punishment and we had to run as fast as we could around the field, everybody would complain and I would get really excited. It was so fun for me. We had, I don't know if they do it anymore, but the presidential fitness test in elementary school was like my favorite thing on the entire planet was when we got to run. I think it was a mile at the time. And then we did some like shuttle runs. And so I was always gravitated towards the running aspect of other activities. I loved competition. Everything was a race. I used to race the boys on the playground. So there was a lot of running that just naturally came in there. And then at the first chance that I had, I think maybe 6th grade, I started running track for my middle school. And then ultimately they pulled me up to the varsity team. And that's kind of when it became a real competitive thing in my life. But before that, it was kind of like, we're hiking. And instead of walking down the mountain, my dad and I are running down the mountain, or just all those little silly games that became a run for me. But the competition kind of took hold when I joined the track team, probably around 11-ish.
I really love hearing that it started with joy and with play and just enjoying what you were doing and the running element that went into what you were doing. Talk a little bit about that competitive side. Like, where does that come from, and what kind of fueled that competitive fire when you were little?
Yeah, I think I know I grew up in a very competitive family, in multiple ways. It wasn't always running related, but I think my parents caught on early on that I was driven by that competition. So even little things, it was like, oh, we'll time you, or let's see who wins. I had two sisters. And so everything was always some sort of race. And it was always a friendly or mostly friendly competition. And I think we all kind of found what we were good at competitively, but we always played game nights. And there was just a lot of different avenues for being competitive, and I know that my dad in particular is a very competitive person, so it's slightly genetic, slightly something that I feel like was ingrained in us, but in a very fun way. And it was always something that kind of drove us to be excited by things instead of scared.
I love that. I love that. Talk about coming into track in more of a formal way and actually having coaching and training. What kind of things were you learning that were your strengths, either in events or in the training that you were doing for the events?
So I put myself in a bit of a box. I feel like in the track space, I kind of tagged myself as a middle distance runner. I raced mostly the 800 and the 1500. Um, However, I felt like what I excelled at was the longer runs and the hill repeats, and not ironically, the things that required a bit more strength rather than just pure speed. Not that I was bad at the pure speed things. I mean, obviously it brought me to college, but I think I kind of tagged myself as this 800, 1500 runner. The coaches realized that I was good at it, and so we all kind of just ran with it. And um but I did see a lot of, you know, those like strength sides play out. Like the longer days, I would see other people fade and I wasn't fading as much. And obviously, it wasn't crazy long at the time, but it was long for what we were doing. And then the hill repeats were just so fun to. I mean, I feel like it was pretty uncalculated, just sprinting up a hill and having a lot of fun with it. And I learned a lot, I think, in the process, just slowing down easy days was helpful in high school. And that's something that a lot of people don't learn that early on. And I almost reverse learned it when I went to college and was told that everything needs to be fast. So it is weird how, mentally malleable we are at that age, and how much your mindset shifts depending on what coach you're working with too. I think I felt like I was learning a lot in high school, and then I almost regressed a bit in college just because of the mentality of the coaches that I was surrounded by and what I was being told. And at the time, I listened to every single thing I was told. I was a perfectionist. I want to do exactly what they're telling me because I want to be the best that I possibly can be. And so I think that part was fun to continue to grow, continue to learn, continue to be a sponge. But then there was like this sneaky part of high school and middle school track where I think I took myself way too seriously, and that competition side of things became like my own worst enemy, I think. There's a lot of fear there and a lot of just anxiety.
Hmm. Elaborate on that a little bit. Where do you think that came from? Was it just a self pressure, or was it also, coming into high school, you're now looking at college and recruitment and that sort of thing? Did that play into it as well?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I've always put pressure on myself. I think, a lot of people in this space, I'm sure, say the same thing. But for me, also, I think because I was such an outwardly competitive person, people pick up on that. And I think there was a lot of excitement with, like, let's take the two youngest people on the team and pin them against each other. And like
Mm.
half the team will be team Bailey and half the team will be team her name. And I think there was a piece to that that just caused this like panic. Like, what if I don't beat her? What if I don't win?
Mm.
What's going to happen? And at the time, it was this end of the world thing. When in reality, at this point in my life, I don't remember who won any of those races. And we both ended up just fine. We both ran for college. It was good for both of us. But I think at the time, like having those head-to-head hyper competitive atmospheres where, people are almost feeding into this internal dialogue that you're already probably not helping yourself with, that can be really damaging as a 13, 14-year-old. So I think a combination of external and internal variables, kind of creating the perfect storm of fear.
So maybe elaborate, you had mentioned sort of the transition from high school to college and the coaching transition that went with that and the things you were learning and absorbing. Let's maybe talk about that transition period. As you were ending your high school career, what kind of opportunities were in front of you for college? Were you shopping multiple schools? Did you have multiple offers? Was there a particular place you really wanted to be?
Yeah, I had multiple offers. I was mostly interested in larger D1 programs. Not surprisingly, I feel like just the nature of my personality, I'm like, I want to go big. I want to be as best as possible. And so my thought process growing up in the Northeast, I don't like the cold. I don't think I ever belonged in the Northeast just as a person. And I wasn't very familiar with anything West. So I was like, what's warm? I'm going to go South. So all the schools I was looking at were, North Carolina, South Carolina focused. Some of them were in Virginia. I really liked the ACC schools. So a lot of the schools I looked at were like UVA. I did look at University of South Carolina and then Clemson. And Clemson ultimately took the win. I loved the coaching staff. I thought, I was trying to vet the schools as best as I could based on how healthy people seemed, how happy people seemed, the coaches, like there was a lot that went into it for me, which I was proud of. Because I think that's hard at that age to know what to look for in a program.
That's really hard. I was just, not to interrupt you, but I want to ask about that. Where did that maybe awareness or guidance that those are the things you should be looking for come from?
I had seen some former high school teammates have really, really hard college freshman years. So they were only like a year or two older than me. And I think seeing what they went through, I was like, I need to vet how healthy the program is. I need to vet like if this is a place. So I think that really helped me and that worked in my favor. And unfortunately, I chose based on the coach. And then ultimately he called me 2 weeks before school started and told me he was leaving and taking his entire staff with him and going to University of Texas, which good for him. He got a great job and he's done a great thing with that program. But for me, it meant a complete stranger after doing all of this homework. And at the time, it wasn't as easy as it is now to like change everything so last minute. I had kind of already married the idea of going to Clemson. And I was like, well, are they really going to choose bad staff coming in? Is this really going to be that detrimental enough to like uproot my entire plan 2 weeks before school? And unfortunately, it ended up being not a great situation and just not very healthy and kind of that classic what you hear with the NCAA and just creating an environment where athletes are not seen as holistic people. And I think that just kind of slowly broke me and then quickly broke me over the course of the almost 3 years that I was there.
Hey folks, quick interruption to make sure to say thank you to Open Fuel for supporting the Women of Distance podcast. Open Fuel is responsible sports nutrition to fuel your adventure. Check them out at openfuel.co. Right now, I'm loving their Ultra Fuel drink mix with 60 grams of carbs and 500 milligrams of sodium all in one serving. Soon, they'll also be adding a gel mix to their product lineup. Again, check them out at openfuel.co and use code WOD to get 20% off your order every time and support the podcast at the same time. Find the link and the code in the show notes.
So talk a little bit about that, the transition to college running and how you were able to sort of notice these things over time and what were some of the red flags that ultimately brought you toward making a change and taking that step to uproot your life and take those extra steps, those next steps?
Yeah, I think there were a lot of yellow flags initially. There was a lot of, we measure body fat every single week. We set goals for body fat. We compare ourselves to other people. There was a lot of like, again, pinning athletes against each other. And I think at the time it's like, oh, it's just competition. It's to make sure that we're getting the best out of everyone. And I think, I think there's better ways to do that, I'm sure. But at the time it was a yellow flag. It was more like, okay, I don't love this, but I'm going to do it. It's fine. And then there
Like,
were
is this the next level? Is this how it's done? Sort of.
yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
just put your head down, grind, like you're tough, you're strong, you can do this. And I really did for a good bit. And then I got injured and it was, well, we're actually going to withhold imaging until after ACC championships so that we can make sure that we have enough athletes on the line because we have too many people injured right now. So it was making decisions based on my health, which didn't feel
Wow.
great either. And then unfortunately just conversations about weight and losing weight and being a better athlete if I was to lose a certain amount of pounds, which is just really hard at that age. And at the time it did feel like a yellow flag because I felt like I had a good head on my shoulders. I was like, just going to laugh it off. Like the fact that they told me that's like the audacity, but it hits deeper than that, I think. And
Right.
next thing I knew, I was making the changes to try to, take the advice that they had given me. And that's where it became a slippery slope and I got really unhealthy. And that's ultimately what drove my decision slash honestly my need to leave at least the program. And I ultimately decided to leave the school to go to Colorado, which was probably one of the best decisions of my life, in ways that I didn't realize at the time.
So talk about that process and what making those changes looked like and what you found in Colorado that was the stark difference that you needed from what you were getting at Clemson.
Yeah. So, full disclosure, I did not run in Colorado for Colorado, for the University of Colorado. I ended my NCAA career after leaving Clemson. And I do think so that decision didn't come lightly. It came after a semester off. I realized, do I go back or do I completely shift course at this point? And I had spent some time in Colorado and I was really obsessed with just the overall active lifestyle that people lived here without having to necessarily identify as one specific sport, because at the time I thought I was retiring. So I was like, I still want to be able to be active and do the things that I love, but not in a competitive way. So I was drawn to the hiking and the skiing and just all the different things you could do outside that didn't involve racing. And that's what I feel like got me back into a healthy place with my body, but also a healthy place with competition. I tried some triathlons. I joined the track club here and then like just started some very low key, low commitment racing. And it just felt like I was slowly dipping my toes back in a way that felt paced by me instead of paced by
Mm-hmm.
someone external. And I was enjoying it again, which is what I told myself. I will never compete again unless I'm enjoying it. And I think feeling that enjoyment again was what allowed me to continue to step kind of more and more into the water, for lack of a better phrase. But yeah.
Yeah. What ultimately then brought you back to competitive running and what did that post-collegiate transition look like?
It was weird. I feel like it was really weird because I had this self-proclaimed retirement. And then as I mentioned, I joined the Boulder Track Club, which is, they meet I think 2 or 3 times a week for workouts and long runs. And I was really enjoying that. And the coach started to kind of tell me that I should race and in an encouraging way. Like, you should try going to this all comers meet. Like, there was a lot of like open meets at CU, and I did start jumping into them, and that felt really fun. But nobody cared how I did. There was no pressure. It was not like the bar felt completely reset because I had no intention of taking it anywhere, and I think that was almost a helpful mindset shift. And then obviously the way my brain works, once I start doing it and enjoying it, I was like, oh, now I need to do more of this. Now I love this again. Like now I want to go all in. And at the time it still meant road and track because I just didn't know anything else. I knew about hiking on trails, but I didn't really know about running on trails. So I kind of embraced that like road track vibe for a bit before I found the trails.
So when you're kind of have this new freedom in the way that you're competing, you had mentioned that in high school you had sort of boxed yourself into the middle distance. Did you start to branch out and give yourself the opportunity to try the longer events during your road and track career?
Yes. Yes, for the most part. On the road, yes. On the track,
Road, right?
I felt like I got sucked right back into the mile and I was like, "What are you doing? This is I don't know. It felt a little weird, but I really fell in love with the 15K on the road. I ran 3 15Ks and I think that's when I realized like maybe I'm actually better at stuff that's a little bit longer. Um and yeah, so I think the road, I definitely opened up the ability to run a little bit longer and enjoyed and actually found myself enjoying it, which was surprising in a good way. Yeah.
So I don't want to skip ahead too much, but where did the transition from road to trail enter the picture?
Yeah, I had a coach at the time, Andy Wacker, and I'm sure you know of him, but he's a big name in the trail and the road world, and he was coaching me for the track and the road at the time. He was a hybrid Nike athlete, and he kind of forced us in the off season. He was like, "We're gonna do a tempo on the trails," and I was like, "This is the weirdest thing I've ever heard of, but that's fine." Um, and the first tempo we did, the training partner that I had on the roads, I completely dropped her, which was surprising because she was usually faster than me, just like all out. And Andy was pacing me on a few of these tempos and he was like, "You're really good at this. Like, you're really good at this." And I think that was surprising to me. I was like, whoa, this is the fact that I'm good at this and it's almost more fun than what I'm doing on the roads. Like, I kind of want to see what I can do with this. So I signed up for a smaller race and had so much fun. I just feel like it was kind of the joy element, the naive aspect, and then just the ability to combine my love for being outside and in the woods and on trails with the running side of things and being able to drop the numbers. It was like the perfect situation for me to kind of jump in. Yeah.
I think that's very relatable for a lot of people who make that transition. Talk a little bit about what kind of things you had to learn to adapt to running, training, competing on the trails. It is different, and the preparation and all of that is there's skill and there's things that you need to learn outside of the road.
Yeah, there was a steep learning curve and then there was like years of still learning. I think I'm still learning. I mean, there's so much that's different. I mean, for starters, fueling while you're doing something is not something I had ever done. And that I learned quite quickly because when I don't fuel well, and it's taken me until the last few years to really dial it in, but when I don't fuel well, I fall a lot. And so I
Hmm.
fell all over the place all the time. And I think I was constantly learning like how to not redline everything so that it's actually sustainable for a few hours. And at first I was like, there's no way I can run and eat and try to like stay on my feet because I was doing everything too hard. So it was also learning to like drop the pace and go by effort and just things that like I probably learned in second grade on the roads, but just felt like such a beginner on the trails. So yeah, I think pacing, fueling, those are probably the biggest things, but then also the difference between uphill running and downhill running and I mean, downhill running came a lot more naturally to me than um, most people, I think, just because of the nature of the trails that I was sprinting down with my dad. But it's still such a different, you have so many variables coming at you so quickly, and you have to make all of these micro decisions that you just don't have to do on the road. So I think all of that has been just such a big learning experience. Not to mention the mental side of the sport, but that's kind of all aspects of running need serious mental work.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting and inspiring. I've noticed the same thing, hearing you talk about fueling and how that relates to like your brain being able to do that work of the hand-eye coordination and staying turned on and engaged for the duration of time you're out there. I think it's neat to hear you put that together, and I think for other people to hear how that goes together as well. Talk about beginning to compete on the trails and where you feel like you learned that not only were you enjoying this and were doing well compared to some of your training partners, but that this was something that you really had something here.
Yeah, it was such a weird progression because this all happened right before COVID. So I think one of the reasons that it stuck so much is because during COVID, like I spent so much time kind of racing myself and pushing myself and really learning how to do all of this without any external help or people around me. And I think sometimes you need that in order to like really find what you're capable of. So I think Strava honestly helped me a lot in seeing what my potential is. The FKT thing became kind of my version of racing because I did that first race and unfortunately got injured as a result, but the seed was planted at that point once I did that first race, and then COVID happened by the time I was uninjured. So it became a lot of FKTs, racing myself, getting everything out of myself that I can, and then seeing like, wow, I'm stacking up against some of the best at least some of the best people that people are telling me are out there. And I think that's just validation. Like I was enjoying the moment and being able to go as hard as I possibly could. And then the time was also validating afterwards. Like, oh, cool. Like I'm doing things that, and like people are excited about this, and it's like kind of connecting me to the community even though I can't actually speak to anyone in person because it's COVID. So it was kind of fun. It was a cool way to enter the sport.
I think that kind of speaks to your innate competitive nature anyway, but what kind of things are you telling yourself, and what does your process look like to go out on a trail completely alone and push yourself to your limit in an FKT style without competition, without other people to drive you to that point? How are you driving yourself to that point?
Yeah. Yeah. I know that the innate competition is a piece of it, but also over time, I feel like I am driven strongly by gratitude, and that like getting excited about what I get to do has just been huge. And it's only gotten stronger throughout the years. Like I thought I was grateful at that time, like, wow, I'm so grateful to be doing this thing again and being able to push and having fun with it. And now it's like everything's reset through challenges that I've had since then. And I'm still so grateful, if not more. And so those are like, if it gets really hard, I'm like, you get to do this. Like, you get to do this. And like, you're a beast. It's just all, I mean, I feel like it all becomes quite mental. I know how to push my body physically, but it's the like, almost like positive affirmations kind of, and like pumping myself up that helps a lot. But for me, that's fueled by gratitude and remembering where I've been and how I've felt when I've lost the sport, especially since redeveloping the love with it.
Yeah, I love that. There's a little bit of shift of gears, but what were you doing for work at the time? And then to piggyback onto that, when did professionalization come onto your radar?
Yeah, so when I was finishing college and first left college, I was a medical assistant. My plan was to go to medical school. That got put on the back burner, but because it kind of all happened pretty close together. But I ended up leaving that job and becoming a nanny for a local family that is actually ultra runners. So I feel like they actually really helped fuel a lot of this. They were kind of my cheering squad and my sounding board. And it allowed a lot of flexibility. So being a nanny, like it paid well, and it allowed me to be able to do these things in a way that I wasn't like completely exhausted every single day, but I was able to survive. And it was still possible through COVID, which was really helpful. I didn't lose my job during that time. And then it was actually during COVID that I got a sponsorship from Solomon. There was like a Golden Trail World Series segment thing, and Skyline Traverse was one of the FKTs. And if you won it, you won like a golden ticket to go compete at this stage race. And that's when I ended up signing with Solomon. And I ultimately did not leave my nannying job for another probably year or so. But I started coaching at the time, and that allowed me even more flexibility to do the thing. And it only grew from there, both with Solomon and then ultimately with Nike.
That was going to be my next question, is where did that transition happen from Solomon to Nike, and what inspired you to make that change?
Yeah, so in 2022, I ran the Golden Trail World Series, and that was probably, I'd say, I mean, I had done a lot up until then, but it had been more self-supported. So I finally like competed on international stages and quite well that year. And ultimately it came down to wanting to grow in the sport and finally having people in my corner that helped me understand kind of what I was worth in the sport and what that could look like. And so I did reach out to other brands just to see what was possible, and to see if any of them would be willing to support me in a way that could make it more possible to chase my dreams. And Nike was amazing, and it was a really smooth transition for me. And I feel like I've been really well supported, and they've allowed me to kind of really focus on this. And I'm coaching as well, so I'm not just running, but I'm pretty focused on running right now, which is so great, to be able to focus on my own running and other people's running through coaching too.
Yeah, that was going to be part of my question. How did that sort of support, that level of support, really change things for you, both in the sport and in your life as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, one, it's allowed me to travel the world, which has been a complete dream of mine since before it had anything to do with running. I've always wanted to be able to travel. I was thinking of studying abroad. Like there were so many different ideas, but I never really knew how to actually make it a thing. So having the support to travel the world, being able to go to these epic places to race, like that is just not possible without, or would not have been possible for me without the support of um, a sponsor. And for me, like Nike really opened the door for being able to chase these dreams in the wildest ways and go kind of to the ends of the earth for this. And that's really cool. And I totally forgot the second part of the question, but that's, yeah.
I want to take a moment to thank Soar Running for their support. Soar Running design and produce running apparel that does justice to the commitment and passion of runners globally. Encompassing textile innovation, pioneering design technology, sports science, and the real-world experiences of runners, their collections are designed specifically for running, for high-performance racing, and also for off-road adventure and endurance. And that's what I'm most excited about. Their trail line is specifically designed to be technical and durable for long adventures. It is high-performance trail gear, blending innovative fabrics and detailing for off-road resilience, function, and endurance. SOAR's innovation and ground-up approach to product development results in a new way of thinking about trail running apparel. Check them out at soarrunning.com. That's SOAR running.com.
I actually forgot the second part of the question too. So we'll move on, because I was already thinking about when you said travel internationally, I was just thinking about you have been at the tippy top of this sport at Sierra Zanol and the Golden Trail World Series, and I think you're a legend at the Rut. You have been at the top. But when I started this podcast, I mentioned you were sort of making a comeback, and it had been about a year and a half, I think, since you had raced leading up to the Gorge Waterfalls 50K. Take us to the beginning of that story and what has kept you out of competition for the past year and a half.
Yeah, it's been crazy. I feel like I felt so secure in the sport, and then all of a sudden the rug was ripped out. at a time when I felt like I had everything in order, like my body's finally in a good spot. I'm taking care of it. I'm doing everything that I possibly can. And unfortunately on New Year's Day, 2025, I broke my foot in half. And kind of random, like very, very random. I was on a run with a friend and was like, something's not right. And then all of a sudden something's really not right. Um, and that was challenging. I mean, feet are challenging in general. Any injury is challenging, but it took a while for that to heal. It was, I mean, it was early May by the time that I was really in a place where they would allow me to start a return to run, which is kind of long for a foot injury, but there's not much blood flow. And I've learned a lot about the foot in the process. But in my return to run, I had a really weird health thing happen. I got seemingly unexplained rhabdomyolysis, which is like a muscle breakdown condition that you really only hear of when people overexert or are running an ultra and don't hydrate or just do like something crazy that they are not used to, and then their body basically starts eating their muscles. Mine did it kind of out of nowhere. It can happen from other causes like autoimmune and random things, but it happened like doing like a return to run, which is very low key for somebody who's trained and who knows how to do the thing. So I was in the hospital actually with that, which was pretty jarring after the entire foot incident. Like it felt like just another kind of kick in the face. And that honestly, it took a really long time to come back from. I had a lot of breathing issues and my heat tolerance went to crap. And all of a sudden I just felt like really not in tune with my body. It was like it felt constantly inflamed, and like my quads are where I got rhabdo, and it just felt like they weren't tolerating any load like they used to. And so it was kind of like it was maybe August by the time that I was actually able to run somewhat normally. And and then in September I was in Europe and I fell on an easy run kind of like really dramatically in Italy, and totally like ripped open my knee and had to find an ER and a trauma surgeon, and they had to kind of put my knee back together. And that was just like kind of the cherry on top. And nothing was seriously damaged with my knee, but it was just another thing that took more time to come back from. So by the time I had really any consistency, it was probably like January, honestly. So to be at Gorge was like a feat in itself. I feel like I had like 2 months of consistency under my belt, and yeah, it was scary. It was like the most vulnerable race of my life, I think.
I really want to get to talking about Gorge, but before we do, going through all of this, the process of all of these things that are really seemingly random and kind of out of your control and just like split second things that are happening. Talk a little bit about your mental state during this time, how you are talking to yourself and how you are getting through these challenges, especially as you're beginning to build back and then having another thing slammed in your face.
Yeah, I think historically injury would cause me to spiral. Like honestly, mentally, I just felt like I didn't have the tools in my toolbox to handle it. I just wanted to run. I felt like a caged animal. And this time something had shifted. I mean, and it's not random. I've put a lot of work into myself. I've put a lot of work into just having the tools to be adaptable and to handle adversity. And I feel like my headspace was something that I will forever be proud of, because it was like one kick after the other after the other. And I felt like I was handling it pretty well given the circumstances. Like I think I kind of dove into proactive mode. Like, what can I do right now that's going to allow me to heal the best I can, instead of, I think my old mentality with injuries was like, what can I do to keep my fitness as best as I can?
Mm-hmm.
And this time it really, I mean, with rhabdo, like I wasn't allowed to do anything afterwards. So it really had to be this like sit and embrace the discomfort and be okay with like full system shutdown and full rest and recovery. And that was hard. But I think during the entire time, there was this undertone of like, patience will get me my long-term goals. Like, trying to rush this process is only going to cause some sort of other thing to happen. So I really focused on fueling. I focused on like making sure that I met with more than one high level sports dietitian to make sure I wasn't missing anything. I got a really good doctor that checked like all the labs that we possibly could to make sure, again, that I wasn't missing anything. And I feel like I just really tried to be my own advocate and make sure that I was turning over every single stone, and also leaning into parts of me that don't have to do with running. I really tried to like connect with, friends that don't run and connect with friends that do run, and still be engaged in the community, but not in a way that has to do with my own running. I saw my family a lot more because I just had the ability and the time to. And like, I think there was a lot of just shifts in my own lifestyle and making sure that there's parts of me that I have that aren't so associated with running. I think there were times in this cycle where I was like, well, I might lose this forever. And if I do, like, I'm still a person and I'm still a worthy person. It doesn't mean that my whole life is gone. I've seen life without this, and I know that there's more to me. And I read a lot of books, and I think I had like lost my love for reading for a while there because I had become so just like consumed by running, and not necessarily in a bad way, but I think you just start to not realize what you're missing out on. And it was really, there were parts of this journey that were actually really helpful for me to kind of tune back into and start to enjoy again, and realize that there's way more to life than running. And I want to be able to have it all.
I love that. You answered all of the questions I was going to ask. I wanted to know about the professional support that you had and the community support that you had. This is such a like mature and healthy way to handle something like this and to go through this period of life. And I'm so, as you said, you're very proud of the way that you handled this. And from the outside looking in, like I am too. I'm impressed by how you were able to navigate that. The next question I do have then is, well, actually, I'm going to come back to that question. What was the sponsorship? What did that look like during the time that you were not competing? How was Nike continuing to support you? How were you continuing to show up as an athlete for them? What did that transition look like?
Yeah, I think this was definitely a good kind of test for that relationship as well, because it's easy for a sponsor to support you when you're doing well. And I think it's also easy to support an athlete when they're injured, but sometimes that's not what it looks like. But I had a great experience. I mean, my athlete manager was consistently checking in on both how I'm doing physically, but also like how I'm doing as a human. And that meant a lot. It made me feel, I think there's a lot of imposter syndrome that comes naturally with injuries, and it can feel like you become irrelevant so quickly, because the world keeps going without you, believe it or not. And so I think just having her reach out to me and make sure that things are still going okay and trying to include me, that was really amazing. And I really tried to dive into the community aspect and not just remove myself and go sit in an isolated corner. So I showed up to a lot of events that Nike was at, and I helped them out with a few different kind of like group activations, I think is what they formally call them, but like group runs I would show up to, and obviously not run, but I would be there and I would be engaging with people and excited about the running, and just trying to help and show up in every possible way that I could, was important to me. It was important to feel like I was still part of a team, to feel like I was still part of a community, and to feel like I could take a little bit of that, like, I'm not worthy piece out of it, because I still bring something to the table as a human, um, and not just as an athlete. And I like to think that that's part of the reason why I was signed by Nike, was also because they aligned with me as a human, and my values. And they've been great with collaboration in general. I've been able to still give a lot of footwear feedback, and just, feedback on things that I've noticed and experienced, but not necessarily have run in recently. So there was a lot of inclusion, and I really appreciated that. But I also tried to show up in the best way I could.
That's awesome. And I'm sure, like you said, healthy and helpful for you too, to be in the community and surrounded by the thing that you love, the thing that brings you joy, even when you can't be competing.
Yeah. And I think
Um,
that's what was different with this injury, was like, I tried to, instead of removing myself and just sitting in the gym all day long, I was like,
mhm.
I'm going to stay engaged, even though it breaks my heart to not be on the start line. Like, I'd rather be out there in some capacity than not show up for the people that I compete against, and then my friends. And yeah.
I think that's important to hear. I think it is easy to kind of shut yourself in and remove yourself when you can't show up the way that you're used to showing up. But I think I've heard time and time again from people who are able to put themselves out there anyway, even when it feels uncomfortable or awkward or you don't know what it's going to be like. I have only heard that it is helpful to be in this community and surrounded by your people in a different way.
Yeah.
Um, Talk a little bit about how, as you have resumed training and started to get this consistency back under your belt, what of those things are you carrying forward with you now into your current training and your new competitive phase that you're coming back into?
Yeah. I mean, this is like the theme of my life, but gratitude, huge. Like, really didn't, I mean, there were times that I really just didn't think I was going to get out of this one, or at least not in the way that I wanted to competitively.
Mm.
So that is a huge piece that drives me every single day. Um, and also the aspects of me that aren't so running focused. I think that's important for me to carry into this, to have just things that I'm excited about, that are, um, maybe not as closely related to sport and competition. So I've been really trying to keep a lot of that around. And then also just a lot of the, like, grounding strategies that I've worked on, like just the general mental health work that I've done, and the connection. Like, that's a piece that I don't want to lose. I don't want to take myself so seriously that I'm training alone every single day and not embracing every run as an opportunity to, see someone, smile at someone, say hi, meet up. I think the connection was a piece that got so big and so full last year. And that doesn't need to leave just because I'm on the other side, and back in the start line.
Love that. We just watched the Boston Marathon today, this morning, and I have heard a lot of posts and sort of inspirational things put out today about Jess McLean and how, not dissimilar from yourself, she sort of was very invested in the sport, very highly driven, and was not enjoying it at a certain point and stepped away like you did in college, after college, and then came back and found that's the key. It's the joy, it's the gratitude, all of the things that you're describing. Just that's what makes a life. And that's what makes when you are a whole person and more complete and less dependent on running as your source of happiness and the only thing that you are. And the result, you need the result to make yourself feel joy. I think it's just rewarding to hear repeated again. And I think it's going to be exciting to see how having that refreshness carries you forward. Um,
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about your training for Gorge. So you said in January is when you felt like you started to stack some consistency. What did that build back look like, coming off of this injury and getting back into consistency?
Yeah, my first workout back, I think, was mid-January. Like, first actual non-easy run workout. And I think it's just been slowly, and I have a coach. So I would say, full disclaimer, I'm not coaching myself. I love to coach and I have the knowledge to coach myself, I think, but I don't think that, I think I need a level of emotional,
Totally.
like yeah, disconnection there. I need to not be as emotionally invested in my own training. But she has done a great job with just slowly and gradually increasing things. It was like a tiny bit every single week, and to the point that there were times where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not building fast enough, this isn't going to be good enough, I shouldn't do a 50K. Like 2 weeks before, I was considering dropping down in distance, but it was really, I feel like it was very unsexy training, which honestly is kind of the way of the world these days. And I feel like my coach tells me time and time again that training doesn't need to be sexy, but it's so hard sometimes to remember that. So yeah, it was very much like, I'd say very conservative for a 50K just because of where I was at. And I had some difficulties with my body along the way. Like, it wasn't perfect. There were runs where I questioned my ability to go longer than 3 hours, because I just didn't have a lot of data points at that distance or going hard for that long. So I'd say the training was really solid, but it was definitely on the conservative end and just a shorter build than you would typically see for a 50K, just given the circumstances.
I think that really speaks to your athleticism and your history. Even if feels like it had been a while, the history is still there. Your body still remembers and knows what it's done before. Talk a little bit about why you chose Gorge specifically, aside from, I would assume, the obvious Nike ACG connection there too.
Well, yeah, I chose Gorge before ACG, before it was announced that it was bought. It's kind of ironic because I chose it. I had done, Gorge was my first race as a Nike athlete, the 30K. And I just found it to be a really fun community. I love Free Trail. I love Daybreak. I think they do a great job. Portland is really special to me. I'm a big cafe fan, and there's a bookstore there that's amazing. So there were things that were outside of running that I was excited about too. Plus, there's always
that theme coming back.
Yes, it keeps coming back. And yeah, there was Portland's great because that's where Nike's headquarters are as well. So it's always great to connect with the team. However, then, and I wanted a very low key kind of intro back. I was like, I just want it to be a really low key, not stacked race, like something where I can dip my toes back in. And then it ended up being basically an international start line.
Yeah.
Which was hilarious. And the most competitive, I would argue, the most competitive race of the weekend. I was like, what have I gotten myself into?
Oh, yeah.
There's like money on the line. It feels like I'm in Europe. And I think at first it was easy to be like, oh my God, I need to change courses and do something different. But then there was the piece of like, why not? Like, if I can put my ego aside and be okay with whatever a healthy day looks like, whether that's 1st, 5th, or 15th, I need to be able to do that. And that's like, this is just a benchmark for me. It's just a chance for me to prove that I can do it, whatever that looks like. Like, if I get 15th, then there's stuff to work on. If I get 1st, there's probably still stuff to work on. But yeah, I think I chose the race for reasons that maybe like 50% of them ended up being, or 60% of them ended up being very valid. And then the rest were kind of out the window when the field ended up being what it actually was.
Do you feel like the way that you were able to approach that mentally and what you can learn out there, what you can gain, is something that's unique to coming back and this being your first race back? Or do you think that that's something that you developed along the way that you'll be able to carry forward into other races?
That's a great question. And I think I can carry it forward, honestly, because I think there is just, there's so many different variables and so many unknowns in every race. And I think what allowed for this mentality was kind of all of the unknowns. And maybe the unknowns are different for a different race, but I think leaning into those unknowns and like taking that kind of beginner's mindset a little bit, with the confidence that you can do the thing. I think that's entirely possible for any race. And it does apply to all races. Like the next race I show up to, there's different unknowns there. It's, it is an international field. There's a lot more vert, and there's a question mark there because I haven't done a super steep race in 2 years. And so there's always something to be curious about. And I think that is something that I'm really trying to take with me, is that curiosity and like what can happen when you just, believe in yourself, but also just go out there with a like, I get to do this mentality. Yeah.
I love that. You mentioned that this was the race to watch over the weekend, and it really was. If they had had a live stream, it was the 50K that I wanted to really see, and we didn't. We got to see glimpses and clips over social media, but we did not get a live stream. So I'm really excited to walk through the race and just, having been through all of this sort of in maybe a little bit of intimidation, but then being able to get yourself to the start line. As you're standing on the start line, what are some of the feelings and emotions that are going through your mind? Or were you able to just quiet?
I was not able to quiet. I think full disclosure, I tried so hard. And I was really scared for the start line, to be honest. Like this felt so vulnerable. In the like days and weeks leading into the race, even thinking about the start line made me want to cry. Like it just was like felt so emotionally charged that I literally went to like extra therapy for it, just to make sure that I had the tools to not like get myself so emotionally revved on the start line that it felt like I couldn't race. So I would say I felt grounded, but also like my emotions were very amplified. It felt like my first start line in 15 months, which it was. And that was so special. And I was trying to practice actively the things that I had talked about with my therapist, like, try to like really feel your feet on the earth, try to notice the things around you. There's like, I love Taylor Swift. And so it was like humming Taylor Swift to myself, like all these little things that just helped keep me away from being my own worst enemy, that I think helped, but it didn't change the emotional sense that was still there of like, wow, this is big. And I'm not thinking of a single person on the start line, which is great, but it was just like, what am I doing? This is crazy. Like, I don't even like, just so many emotions. Yeah.
That was going to be my question is, was there anybody that you pictured yourself spending the day with or going out with, or that might be coming from behind, or any just awareness of other people that were there?
There was when I was visualizing going into the race, like I knew the start line going in. I felt like that helped me prepare mentally, just given where I've come from. I don't mind knowing who I'm racing. I kind of like it. But on the start line, like I honestly didn't feel like I had any business, like playing out all of the different things that could happen with the top level athletes, because I really wanted to put my blinders on and run my own race because I didn't know what my fitness would bring me. Like I've raced Jen Lichter before. I've raced Mao Yao, but I've never raced Tara Dower, and I obviously know she's really strong. So I knew that they were all going to be players in the game. And then there were a few other names actually that I was very aware of. But for me, it was like, it doesn't matter where you are, just do your thing. Like I actually purposely wanted to let the front group go out a little bit so that I wasn't going out too hot. So yeah, the only thing I knew was like, don't go out with the leader because you just don't have business doing that right this second. So yeah.
That was going to be my next question. What did your strategy look like going into the race, and how did that strategy actually play out in real time in the race?
Yeah, the strategy from my coach was like, let the leaders go and do your own thing and just get to like 2/3 of the race, knowing that, because I think she just wanted to avoid a giant like explosion and death march, because that's not really going to help my confidence. It's not going to help my fitness. We wanted to come out of it in one piece. And I would say the execution was pretty good. Like I let Jen and Mao Yao go. I think what surprised me was how close they still were, even though I felt like I was letting them go. And I was trying purposely to just like literally not look up for a bit and just like really tune into what felt good. And like the goal was to be able to race, but just like give myself some time first and like really pace myself for what felt good for me. And that's like exactly what I did. And I felt like Jen and Mao Yao were having this like cat mouse race in front of me. And I was maybe 15 seconds behind them, just kind of like doing my own thing. And like I was having so much fun, but I like didn't feel like I was engaging in the race at all, but was still there. And so I think that was kind of fun for like half of the race. It was like I was like watching the race happen, but I didn't have to do
Yeah.
anything necessarily other than like run my own race. So that was pretty fun to be in that like mental space too.
Where did that change? Where did you turn it into a race and begin to really compete outside of yourself, outside of just yourself?
Yeah. I went through halfway, like probably 10 seconds behind them. So I was basically still with the two front people. I knew Tara was somewhere close behind, but I didn't really know where. And like occasionally she would show up and then disappear and then show up. So I was like, great, I'm being chased by Tara Dower. But I think it was kind of around mile 17, I was like, okay, I'm starting to notice like this is getting a bit uncomfortable. And that's where Jen and Mao Yao started to step away. And I was like, I still have a long way to go. I'm just going to like keep running my own race, but like make it an honest effort. And I felt like that's when I was like, okay, you really got to like dig deep here. But it was still very much like, I felt like I was running from Tara more than I was chasing Jen Mao Yao, if that makes sense. I just felt like I didn't feel like I had that extra dial necessarily on that day to spend 15 more miles, like amplifying the pace. It felt like I could really hold on to what I had and like keep chasing that. But I was already feeling like a little fade. So I was like, just keep doing what you're doing. Like my therapist and I had like created the out and back at the end. We called it Get To Hill. Like instead of being this big scary out and back that I hate, it was like I get to do this entire hill. Like I get to do it, and I wouldn't have been able to do this a year ago. And
I love that.
once Tara appeared, then it was like, shoot, now I really got to dig deep. And that was really fun. We climbed up together and turned around basically at the same time. And then I feel like I was like, my legs are falling off. Like I'm like running with heart now, and I don't feel like I'm running off my fitness anymore. So I let her go a little bit, despite her like yelling at me to come with her. I was like, I can't do this anymore. But then I realized that my downhill legs were fine. So I started like trying to push it a little bit more and actually made contact with her again. But I just felt like it was a little bit too late. Like it ended up being this like awkward gap on pavement where like I just felt like I wasn't going to make up time. But we were both working really hard at the end, and it was fun to have it be an honest race after all of that. And I think it's easy for me to kick myself for letting her go at all, but I'm just so proud of like being able to race with these girls when I really felt like I had no business doing that going in. That I told Debo afterwards that I think I'm the happiest fourth place person on the planet, because it's just like to go under the course record on a day that like I just felt like I was going to be out there gallivanting, doing my thing. Like, I don't know. It was just unreal, like so exciting.
Yeah, and to have your body show up for you. You had really, it seems like, done the work in your brain. And even if there was some questionable confidence in your brain coming in, you had done a lot of work there. And I think having your body be able to show up for you too has to feel rewarding. Talk a little bit about what you learned and gained coming out of this, even like as soon as you crossed the finish line and then in the days that followed as things settled.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that my body can do it. Like, I think I've had so many doubts about, can it go long again? Is it going to shut down? Am I going to get rhabdo again just by running a race? I don't know. Like, there's no telling, like, I don't know. I think there's just a lot of uncertainty when you haven't raced in that long. So I feel like something I gained from it is that, one, I belong. Like, I can race with these people. And, I think everybody's in different fitness places, but I feel like I'm like just beginning my journey. And so the fact that I could race with them for as long as I could gives me a lot of hope. So I think that was like, okay, I still belong. That's great. That's awesome. My body can do these things still and be fine. Like, I feel like I was probably more unscathed than most of the other longer races I've done. So that was pretty exciting too. Like, that's shocking after everything that's happened. Um, and then just like the power of the mental state. Like, this was the most proud of my mental flow during racing that I've ever been. And I know there's going to be hard days and there's going to be days that my mind doesn't show up and it's not great. And but it's nice to know that, like, what a very good day looks like mentally, and how and what I can do to kind of bring myself back to that place. Like, I think there were a lot of different things that I practiced and tried during this race that I'm excited to carry with me to even bigger start lines and later in the year. So there's a lot that I'm taking out of it. I don't feel like I lost much in this race besides a toenail. I feel like everything else was like a net win. Yeah.
That was going to be one of my questions, is coming to the next start line, which we'll get to in a moment. But, we mentioned it is a different format. And so you're coming in again with curiosity and sort of a freshness coming back. Do you also feel like now you can stand on that next start line with more confidence in addition to that curiosity?
I think so. Yeah. I think there will be, less of the can I do this, which is kind of a terrifying feeling. Like, is my body going to survive this? And more of just that pure curiosity of like, well, what's going to happen? We don't really know. And that's exciting and nerve wracking in a different way. But I could live without the like, is my body going to make it to the finish line? Like, that part is terrifying. So yeah, I think, yeah.
We have to ask that question. What is the next start line? And as much as you know, what does your training look like leading up to it?
Yeah, so my next start line is Marathon du Mont Blanc in Chamonix, and then OCC at the UTMB finals in August. So I'm keeping it pretty simple this year. I'm not trying to race a ton because I'm really just trying to get that consistency. So training, as far as I know, the goal is really just to keep stacking bricks on what we have. So getting some more long days in, getting some more tempo work, because that's kind of a weakness of mine, is being able, I can go fast for a short amount of time, but I think having that like sustained focused effort is really kind of still a low hanging fruit and work in progress for me. So I know that there's a lot of tempo in my future. And just getting, I also really want to focus on vert and being able to be comfortable running a good amount of vert again, because I think that's kind of the last thing that's felt comfortable with my quads in particular, is just high vert days and being able to stay upright for the entire time. So I'm excited to kind of bring that back and explore that again, and be in the mountains and on summits. And yeah.
Will you do most of that training at home in Colorado, or will you travel for some of that training?
Yeah, I'll train here until Marathon du Mont Blanc is the last week of June. So I'll travel out maybe 10 days before. But then between Marathon du Mont Blanc and OCC, I'm going to stay in Chamonix and just train there. My coach is actually based out there, so it's kind of nice and convenient. I can run with her too, which is really fun. And it's just nice to be able to be on the trails and specific terrain and the right time zone. So I'll just stay there. Yeah.
I didn't ask this earlier, and I should have. Who are you being coached by?
I'm coached by Stephanie Howe. She's amazing. She works under CTS.
Awesome. That's very cool. I didn't realize that. All right, bringing us to a close, I am really excited to watch you race this summer and see how things continue to progress and develop for you with this fresh confidence, fresh gratitude that you're coming into it with. Last question I have is what I ask of everyone who comes on the podcast, and that's, if you could go back and give your 20-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Ooh, Um, I feel like I have two.
Go ahead. You
I
can
have
do
trouble
two.
making decisions, but so the first would be take yourself less seriously. I think that is something that I, may or may not have listened to, but I think if it was me telling me, I like to think I would. Um, Take yourself less seriously and trust your gut. Like, I think advocating for yourself is so important, and your gut is always going to tell you if there's a yellow flag, for example. Trust that gut and do something about it. Have a conversation, tell somebody what's making you uncomfortable, even if it's not the direct person that's making you uncomfortable. I think um, squashed my gut sense instead of trusting it and running with it. And I think that's so easy to do as a young individual. But the more 20-year-olds we have in the world that are trusting their own gut instinct, I think the healthier it'll be. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Bailey, thank you so much for taking your time to chat with me. I really enjoyed getting to hear, especially the most recent aspects of your story and where things are going for you from here, and just really enjoyed getting to spend this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.